Welcome to the next book review in the series. This is going to be on SAS Rogue Heroes, if you can see it with the reflection there. Book by Ben McIntyre. SAS is the Special Forces unit which formed the blueprint, the foundation for all modern special forces. They were formed during the Second World War in North Africa in the fight against Rommel by a guy called David Stirling, who was a bit of a rogue himself. A Scottish nobleman who didn't fit into the systems and wanted to do things differently, had a hard time fitting in, and therefore found a new way of engaging the enemy. And it's very much a story about some really interesting characters, some very different people. I found it incredibly interesting because it's a part of my research that I'm doing on the next principle for Manifesto, which is dangerous men. We have a theory that men are dangerous. And we cannot, as much as we want to, just decide to be nice and good, and then that's all going to work. But instead, we need to deal with the fact that we have all kinds of forces within us, and we need to be able to instead channel that energy in a specific way. And it's been through living in a very protected, safe, even coddled and comforted life that in some ways we've lost contact with reality. And so reading this book has been a good reminder for me of seeing that reality as well. A little bit more background is that I've joined the Danish Home Guard recently, and it's still a very safe occupation, a way to use my time, but it gives a little bit of a taste of what it's like to be part of the organization and the group of men who are holding the whole of our society safe and there to take action when something bad happens. But of course, this book here is about the guys who are right on the edge of that reality. They experience some of the darkest and most dirtiest parts of the war, and even were probably a part of a lot of that escalation in what used to be kind of like a gentleman's activity in some ways. There was a lot of rules of warfare. The SAS might have been a big part of breaking that down. And so I'm going to read a little portion from the book. This is from page 292. So towards the end of the war, as Allied forces have actually entered German territory and now encountering German citizens who are just defending their own homeland. Many of them very, scared, of course, of being invaded by a foreign power. And so the story is, the quote is, "A few days later, Sea King was passing through another wooded area when he felt the odd sensation of being watched. A moment later, a boy, perhaps 14 years old, emerged from nowhere, holding 2 hand grenades, the long-handled variety known to the British as spud mashers. Sea King's trained his guns on the teenager, preparing to shoot the second he moved. A long, slow second passed as the boy and the old soldier stood locked in eye contact. Slowly, the German boy lowered the grenades and surrendered. Only later, from a surrendering colonel, did Sea Kings learn that throughout the wordless confrontation, a group of concealed German paratroopers had their guns trained on him. If you had shot him, would have fought to the death. Some of the poor little blighters were only 13 or 14 years old," recalled Cooper. "They're crawling out of holes everywhere. The Germans put schoolboys in uniforms and forced them to fight when their chances of survival were minimal. It was inhumane. Yet the SAS was also prepared to kill children if necessary. If you shot one little bastard, the others would start crying," a trooper grimly recalled. At one point, on a sporadic fire, 2 captured teenage Germans were made to sit on the bonnet of a jeep as human shields. During a pause, one of them leaped down and tried to run away. He was shot dead. Bit of a taste of the Second World War in its closing phases as they were heading towards Berlin. So what I really noted with this book, as I said, is that there was a very special type of man that was engaged in that. A kind of man that sometimes isn't always so easy to find, or at least dares to be able to be found in society today. In the Danish ministry, we have a big focus on krænkelsessager, which means, what was it? Abuse or something like that. Or violation cases where a person feels violated. I think a lot of the guys in this first part of the SAS probably would have failed a lot of those tests. But there was also it's not like they were all just like, some of them were drunkards and very violent psychopaths. But that wasn't the case for all of them whatsoever as well. Actually, there was a very big diversity. And what was most surprising for me actually was that a large part of the story tells about an army chaplain called Fraser McCluskey, who was a really central and important part of the Special Air Services, and even parachuted in to Europe together with his forces, and was together with men in their undercover work behind German enemy lines, alongside the fighting men with the soldiers, and really taking care of their spiritual needs in many ways, and how incredibly valuable and affectionately he was appreciated by even the most violent and aggressive and kind of male macho of the SAS troops, or whatever it is. So yeah, that was definitely something that spoke a lot into my understanding of that force as well, is that there's a depth to men that I think especially that comes out as men are placed in those kinds of circumstances of extremity that was experienced. So this book was a really enjoyable read. It was easy. It was solid. It was built very well on original sources, I think, and it really paints a really interesting picture of the men who fought in the battles and their experiences that they had, and taking the war to a different level, a different approach, and all the different things that happened there. I believe there is a documentary on with the same name based on the book as well. I haven't seen the documentary. I expect if it's anything like what normally happens, then read the book. It's better than watching some kind of documentary if you're interested in this. And it'll just give a lot more depth. And it's less about entertainment value and more about actually conveying a realistic picture of what was happening. So yeah, that was it for this one. Hope you enjoyed it, and let me know if you have any comments. Thanks.